Turning now to politics, President Trump is facing a critical test this week with primaries in 6 states, some of which could show his influence on the party he leads. Democrats hope that voters will express their displeasure with the president and his policies in the voting booth. On Tuesday night, we'll see if that's the case. But for now, a new CBS News poll shows the president's numbers are heading in the wrong direction on a number of key issues. The president's job approval stands at just 37%. It is the lowest since 2003. As for how Trump's policies impact the economy in the short term, 13% say they are making it better, while 65% say they are making it worse. And on the war with Iran, when asked who has the advantage, 38% say the U.S. does, 21% say it's Iran, and 41% says neither. To break down more of these numbers and preview the expected headlines in tomorrow's primaries, we turn to CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, walk us through how Americans view the state of the economy. What were the key takeaways here?
Hey there, Nicole. I want to start with this because feelings are always so important and attached to finances. Concerned is a big word they use. Stressed is a big word they use. Uncertain is another. But we also saw the number who feel that they're financially secure drop to under a majority from a year ago. So that's what underpins a lot of the numbers that you read there at the top. And of course, underpinning all of that really stands out has been gas prices. We saw an increase in the number who said those gas prices right now for them are financially difficult or they're a hardship. And that in turn goes towards something you also said at the top about the war, which is, do people feel like they have a clear understanding of what's going on specifically with the situation in the Strait of Hormuz? 7 in 10 said they do not. And that is part of that uncertainty that goes through all those economy feelings, Nicole.
Yeah, and I was going to say, how does that play more specifically into the war with Iran? How much of that is weighing into people's views on the economy? Are they tied together or seen as separate issues?
Well, take a look at this. Majority say they feel that the president's economic policies in general are making them financially worse off. That's one of the reasons that they've seen his approval for handling inflation go down now to its lowest level of the term. But also this, since we're talking politics and we're about to talk midterms, let me show you this among Republicans. Yes, they still strongly support the president on a number of things, but there's been a decline in the number of Republicans who say they approve of his handling of inflation. What that tells you is gas prices cut across party lines, Nicole.
And so more specifically, what are you going to be watching for ahead of tomorrow night's primaries?
So we've got a number of storylines. One is, let's say on the president, his influence. When we get to stories like Kentucky, Thomas Massie in his primary, of course, the president's endorsed his challenger. We're going to be watching that. We've seen a string, notably in Louisiana just this weekend, of folks that the president does not endorse going down. That's Bill Cassidy. And then, you know, the road to the House control probably runs at least partly through Pennsylvania this year. We're going to have a number of competitive House districts all along the Delaware River. And we're going to be watching all of those in and around Pennsylvania and those that area there. That's going to be so important, setting up a lot of what you and I and everyone are going to watch through November, Nicole.
All right. We will be watching it together. Anthony Salvanto, thank you so much. Thanks. I want to turn now to CBS News' Aaron Navarro. He joins me now from Lexington, Kentucky, where he is following Congressman Thomas Massie's primary race. And Aaron, I spoke with Congressman Massie just last week, and he told me this is going to be a very close race. What is your sense on the ground?
Well, in an event earlier today, he acknowledged that while the president's endorsement to his challenger, Ed Gowrine, gives him a 20-point boost in the polls, according to Massie's calculations, it's the outside spending, over $30 million at this point, that he believes has made this race competitive. But in his final argument to voters, he really stuck by the times that he has voted against President Trump when it comes to spending for foreign countries or when it comes to the war in Iran. on. He said and argued that he is the same congressman that these voters in the 4th District of Kentucky voted into Congress in 2012 and said that he has remained principled when it comes to matters of government spending and foreign wars.
Over the weekend, Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy lost his primary after going against the president, most notably by voting to convict him during his second impeachment trial. Obviously, we know the dynamics are a bit different with Congressman Massie, but could he potentially meet the same fate despite some of those arguments you just made?
It's certainly possible. From voters, supporters of Massie that I talked to, they really felt that this was a 50-50 race at this point. But Massie voiced a lot of confidence in knowing the district, particularly when it comes to agriculture. He made sure to be talking about the times that he has taken a stand in Congress to get some of the funding that is needed for farmers in this northern Kentucky district. And he also believes that the support from pro-life, pro-gun groups here in Kentucky's 4th District will help get him over the hump. Take a listen to what he said on ABC this past Sunday.
You say the president is desperate, but he's got a pretty good record of defeating people he wants to target in Republican primaries. We saw Bill Cassidy yesterday. We saw what happened in Indiana. How are you going to be able to overcome the president's opposition?
Well, I have the endorsement of the Right to Life organizations, the gun organizations. I had 4 members of Congress come here yesterday and campaign with me. So my situation is a little bit different. Plus, I've had millions of dollars come in from the grassroots, tens of thousands of donors to my website.
Now, President Trump, for his part, has really done a lot to post about Massie. And earlier this afternoon, he sent his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, to campaign with Massie's challenger, Ed Gowrine.
Yeah, that's right. Pretty unusual there, too. Aaron Navarro, thank you so much. Well, here to preview Georgia's primary day is Adam Beam. He is the deputy politics editor for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So great to have you with us, Adam. I want to start with the Senate and gubernatorial contest on the GOP side. Are these races a referendum on outgoing Governor Brian Kemp?
Well, I think Republican challenger Derek Dooley wants to make it that way. Derek Dooley is a former football coach. He's a political newcomer, never run for public office before, and even prior to 2020, had hardly ever really voted before. And Derek Dooley is really basing his entire campaign on an endorsement from Governor Brian Kemp. Governor Kemp remains one of the most popular Republican officials in the state. But so far, that popularity has not really transferred to Derek Dooley. There's 3 candidates in this race on the Republican side. 2 of them are sitting members of Congress. President Trump has stayed out of the race. And so far, none of these 3 candidates have been able to break through.
And which means maybe a runoff might be likely. So what potentially could the outcome of the Senate GOP primary mean for Democratic incumbent Jon Ossoff?
Well, I think so far, Senator Ossoff is just sitting back and enjoying all the mudslinging that's happening between these 3 candidates. He hasn't really had to do anything. They haven't really been able to hit him effectively because they've been so busy fighting among themselves. And I think it's one of the things that's making Republicans here really nervous. They feel like Senator Ossoff is the most vulnerable Democrat on the map. He's the only incumbent Democratic senator who's running for re-election in the state that President Trump won in 2024. They feel like this should be an easy pickup opportunity for them, and yet they feel kind of out of position because of the way this primary has played out so far.
And then walk us through the gubernatorial contest, both on the Republican and the Democratic side, because there's a pretty crowded field on both sides of the aisle here.
Absolutely. You would think the Senate contest here would kind of dominate everything, but it's really been the race for governor that's got everybody's attention. On the Republican side, you have Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. Everybody thought that the nomination was his to lose. He got an endorsement from President Trump very early on in the process, but then earlier this year, a billionaire healthcare executive by the name of Rick Jackson jumped in the race. He spent about $83 million of his own money so far, and he's really upended this contest. It's really become a 2-person race between Jackson and Jones. President Trump today has reiterated his support for Lieutenant Governor Jones, but the polling shows it's a really neck-and-neck contest despite that. Now, on the Democratic side, you still have no consensus. Former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms has been the consistent leader in the polls from the outset, but she's not really been able to break away. There's a large, sizable group of voters who are undecided. They're trying to choose between a number of alternatives, including former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, who was a Republican, who most famously supported the state's abortion restrictions. He's now switched parties. He says he's become dismayed by Trump's policies and the MAGA movement. He's trying to get some attention there. And then you have a state senator, Jason Estevez, former state senator, and a former DeKalb County chief executive, who are also trying to carve lanes in this primary.
Well, a lot to keep track of, but we know you'll be on top of it and probably working late into the night tomorrow, hopefully with some pizza. So Adam Bean, we thank you so much for being with us. And a quick programming note for us. Major Garrett will host special coverage of tomorrow's primaries right here on CBS News 24/7, starting at 8 p.m.